just wanted to come in quickly because, I see something that's wrong with what's going on, and it might be other states too, but especially in North Carolina. I don't know if you guys are aware, if you do rent in a state like North Carolina, the landlord has the majority rule as far as what he or she can or cannot do. Or property management, that's a front for the landlord. And let me explain that. The property management company is a front for the property owner. And the problem with that is you don't always know who the property owner is. Like literally, you have to go and request to find out who the property owner is, because you never see the property owner. The property owner never mentions on the lease, which is absolutely illegal anywhere else, mentions his name. You have no idea who this person or persons are. Okay, now in reference to trafficking and things like that, we've been having notorious issues with men who are doing things which I call passive aggressive to get back at women. We commonly call it like a revenge type of rape if it's sexual assault. But, things that are what hurt people do. Hurt people hurt other people. And what's happening is, and what we must realize, is that some of these black men, whether they're playing sports, and I'm not saying you could just be a sports player, but I'm saying that's just an example. Whether you use Bitcoining, got your money, whether you were a real estate person, or whether you went out there and worked a 9 to 5 and were able to save up enough money, a lot of these men in the black community are gaining wealth. What we're not talking about is what some of them are doing with their wealth, and if that wealth accumulation is harming women. And that's something where misogynoir, in particular in African American communities, is not talked about at all. In a number of different situations, because people are afraid to actually come out and say, something against black men. And I do understand that. I do understand the situation where they're scared of feminism. I understand all of that. However, you have to understand that black feminism is not white feminism. And feminism is not against men. That's one of the primary differences. Black feminism basically supports black women. We don't have a beef with black men necessarily, unless the black men are the ones who are guilty of doing so, whatever, harm that was done. So what I'm really, really perplexed about is, in this situation where there's trafficking, there's multitudes of revenge against women, multiple different types of ways these men are plotting to do this, a state can allow for people not to know who actually owns their property. You have to go through all these loops and jumps and all of these things to find out who owns your property. In my case, you guys know, someone bought out my property management company, or they sold it to a larger company. Did that company originally own? I don't know. No one knows. Is this company affiliated with people? I mean, these people could be in the mafia. We don't know. And that's the problem. Where I'm from, most of the people who are real estate agents in Virginia are also lawyers, and they're familiar with corporate law. So it can cut both ways, because if you do have a dispute, then they're lawyers, and they're definitely not going to help you, not most of the time. So, if you're screwed, then you probably need to move. You can complain, and most of the time they're pretty logical, and they'll try to fix it. At least they were back in the day, but sometimes it's like, forget it, But these days, we're dealing with this stealth type of harassment, stealth sexual harassment, where they're hidden behind this veil of secrecy, and the people who are aiding them are the people that you're claiming are the ones that are against black men. They're the white women. They're the Hispanic women. They're not black women that are aiding and abetting these people, because basically it's a crime. It's a number of crimes that can be committed. Coercion. I mean, it's just, you don't want to be in an uncomfortable position where you used to date someone and he ends up buying the place that you stay. I mean, that's just not, you know, suppose it's your abusive ex and you guys have a domestic violence situation going on. This is, I don't think people understand how important this is. People need to understand. This needs to stop. In this age of trafficking and sexual harassment, we need to stop allowing for states to hide who owns the actual property, right? And it's bad enough if you know who the property owner is, and that property owner is a jackass. You know, if you bought the property from someone, hey, it's your property. If they want to be a jerk or whatever, switch it over to a bank loan or deal with the bank only. But I'm talking about if you're renting. This is a problem. It's a number of single women, especially African American women, who still rent. So what's going to happen, I think, is we're going to have to get to a point where we're awakened by the fact that there's reality. These men are weak. And I don't mean to be defaming men. I'm talking about the ones, it's not all men, I'm talking about the men who are actually doing this. They're not individuals that are capable of understanding that manipulating situations isn't going to make them look any better. You know, pretending that they're letting women stay places who are paying rent, pretending that they're involved in relationships with women. There was one case of some man doing this openly to a woman. I don't know if you guys saw it. Had her, it was unbelievable, tried to sign a lease because she was on Section 8, if you guys know, to be in housing, right? So she was getting subsidized housing, and he tried to get her to sign a lease to basically prostitute herself. I mean, for real talk. This happened like a month or so ago. And she went and reported him, and rightly so. You know, and forget HUD, I'm going straight to the police department because that's nuts. But this is, you know, oftentimes when you see these type of cases, they're telling you something, right? They're so outrageous and so unbelievable that they're telling you about what's about to happen. Now you see how tight that this rental market is. People are raising rent. I mean, I just had my rent raised twice in 6 months, and it's absolutely absurd. I mean, you're going to sit down here and start realizing you're getting taken advantage of, and sometimes you have to wonder, you know, under this excuse that this is what the market rate is, if people are taking advantage of you for other reasons. You know, sexual harassment is a really bad thing. Don't get me wrong, but we had grown out of that in the 90s and the thousands to a point where some men were acting mature. But as some people are saying, now we're getting a purge-like environment where things are completely out of control. Now, you're talking about someone evading the law like that, well, they can come and buy a property and say, well, you know, so what, I used to date her, or so what, I asked her out and she's told me no. Do you see the revenge rape portion? God forbid that person report a sexual assault and not know who it is, and not know who the owner is of the unit that she's staying in or the complex. This is where the property management in this state does not hold any accountability. All they do is, and it's almost impossible to believe, is act as a pass-through for the actual people that own it. Now, what they can and cannot do depends upon, this is with the last management, what the owner said. This management, I'm not sure if they own it or not, and I've said that, they don't tell you. And it was absolutely outrageous, some of the stuff they were telling me, you know, and I'm calling, checking on what the rental rate is now, as I try to figure out, you know, how to move fast enough, which is also costing me a lot of money. But as I do that, I'm figuring out that the previous property management company blatantly violated federal law. You have to wonder, and there's a lot of these type people in North Carolina who are football players, and, you know, Michael Jordan's from North Carolina originally, these type folk. And there's nothing wrong with these people, most of them, you know, but, you know, for every reason you can think of, people who have money that don't have good sense are very dangerous. And I think that's like a person standing behind a curtain all the time talking to you. You never see this person's face, and the next time you see someone, they say they are that person, and you're like, is it really that person? But this person you meet is also mean and dominating and violent towards you. And, you know, I don't know how to describe it. It's an ugly feeling. It feels like it should be illegal. If it's not illegal, it definitely should be. They have to put in every apartment I've rented, not just Virginia, but all the other states that I've they have to put the name of the property owner on the actual document. So this will not happen. Now, if you happen to be a member of the Mexican mafia, or you happen to be down with some dude who wanted to date you, now want to pretend like he's still dating you, you know what I'm saying? Still dating you and never dated you, you know what I mean? That type of mentally ill brother. If you're sitting here in that type of situation, there's not much you can do about it because you don't know what connections this other party has. But you can look into what's going on conspiratorially, meaning are they getting paid by this other party in order to try to pimp you out? And there's no other way dealing with sex and human trafficking that you can say it. It's basically trying to pimp out somebody that they're jealous of. They're trying to get back at somebody, which is worse than any type of revenge, rape, or anything that has ever been done in the past. It's disgusting to think of, but when you think of all the possibilities of what could happen because of the carelessness of this type of situation. Now, I just assume this other party, okay, or it's the conundrum where basically because you're single, because they do know you're single, especially a single mom, then they try to harass you and sexually harass you just because of that reason. So you see, you're married when it's convenient for someone, right? Then they can exploit you that way because they know you're single. Or they exploit single women because they're never satisfied, and they'll try to do things to discriminate against you, especially when you have children, just because of jealousy. So, I mean, as we go along and we see how extensive this trafficking thing is, and we see what people are capable of, and just the enamored stupidity of it all, it makes you wonder. You know, it really does. Where are we going with this? We have to start understanding that the exploitation of women started with white male supremacy, right? And really, honestly, in the white community, the women haven't done the best job with controlling this problem. Now, you say white feminism, but, you know, white feminism primarily still just does that we're going against men sort of thing, which is why black feminism is different. They don't necessarily ever really resolve an issue. Then they went right into transgenderism from where they were, and it didn't accomplish anything. Now there's transgender men who can be women, who are not representing us, but who are partially giving their advice in something where a cisgender woman still has a limited voice. And that's not helping. And I do know that black feminism as well has joined in to the discussion. You know, we're not getting into the oppression Olympics or who has more oppression, who has less oppression. We're not doing that. I always tell people, and you know I'm not doing that. That's not the point of intersectionality. The point of intersectionality was racism versus sexism, or excuse me, racism and sexism combined as far as discrimination goes, especially in the workplace. So, see, again, we have the erasure of those voices for black women. We're still not resolving the issue of racism and sexism for black women. We're still not resolving those issues. So I'm like, you went straight from 0 to 100 and skipped everything in between. That's not feminism. That's an agenda, right? And I understand how people are upset by that, but I'm still here with the issues. I don't care what agenda they're following. You can't ignore women by putting them into a spotlight and then speaking around them as if they aren't there. And I know how that feels because people do that to me in my life quite often. So, you know, it isn't something that I'm not used to. It isn't something that's right. And it isn't something that is anything but perpetual ignorance. And generally when people do this, they're doing it out of spite, because of jealousy, because of immaturity, because of any way they can to actually get attention for themselves. And I know this, so it infuriates me, not because, excuse me, I want someone's attention. It infuriates me because you have your hand over my mouth. i.e. Sexual assault. I don't like people muting my voice. And I don't think anyone likes that. So you can do what you like, and I'm going to keep speaking and keep pretending like I'm not saying what I'm saying. Basically stealing from me at the same time, but while pretending like you don't hear me. But I'm going to keep saying it. The situation is dire. People are renting primarily as black women, and black women are getting basically, stalked. They need to make it law, federal law, that on that contract, when you sign that lease, of course, common sense will say, I'm not going to prostitute myself. That was just, woof. The height of, I would have probably been in jail because I would have tried to kill this man, for even asking me to do something like that if that had happened to me. But I'm talking about, to protect women's rights, we need to look beyond just the basic intimate partner violence, which a lot of these laws are based in. And these things do happen, domestic violence and things of that nature. Everything's not IPV. Everything's not domestic violence. Sometimes people actually get stalked. And I think that the literature is failing us here, because you remember, I do have a degree in public health, and it says that it's very unlikely for women to be stalked by people that they don't know. The majority of people who are stalked and sexually assaulted are by people who they know. And that might be the case, or it may have been the case, but I'm always the one to say that sometimes we need to look at literature to see if it needs to be updated. Because this has been escalating, and it's not because of COVID. I don't know what's causing it. I say the last 5 to 6 years, everyone has noticed that it's been a revival of the 1970s or 80s. And these men are acting like it, like there are no laws. They can do whatever they like to do. They are wildly irresponsible as far as women are concerned, and are still just as sexist and misogynist, including Misogynoir, towards black women. When I mean it's using Misogynoir. Sorry, the car is distracting. That's a small car to have such a loud engine. Anyway. Still not finished? Okay. Every time I try to talk, you just keep You need a muffler, dude. A better one than one you got. It's a small little, I don't know, Toyota or something. I don't know what it is. It's loud. It sounds like some kind of truck. Should sound with a Hemi. But I'm sure ain't no Hemi in that car. Anyway. So like I'm saying, when we're dealing with reality, we start understanding that it's more of a difficulty with people understanding that they can't get away with whatever they want. Okay, a lot of times men are like children. When they start getting money, or you give them some type of entitlement, or even if you give them privilege, as in white male privilege, they lose it, and they start to take advantage of everyone, because naturally people who you give too much power, black or white, will take advantage of the situation. So that's not unusual. What is unusual is the fact that they're not getting properly prosecuted for it. And this is why, more than likely, because yes, they have allies in the police department. I've discussed that numerous times, which is unfortunate. These may be members of the police department, because they oftentimes get arrested, especially as of late. But I personally can tell you there's a lot of corruption there. And situations where there's loopholes. If you're in a state and you see that you don't know who owns your property, don't assume that your property management company owns it. Ask them, do you own this property? If they don't, ask, can you get the name of the person who owns the property? And don't let them get around it. If you have to, get a lawyer. And if that's an issue, say you feel unsafe being a single woman, not knowing who owns your property. Because you see this transition into sexual slavery here. They not only own the property, they own you. Now, don't get me wrong. No matter what you do, men are always going to be threatened. And then, as I've said before, white women haven't been the best in dealing with this particular situation, because they're oftentimes invested in white male, culture. whatever white males do, because white males are the heads of their family, they're going to support. And I've seen black women do the same. Internalize, internalize, internalize. You see sexism right in your face. You see it's wrong. You see all types of stuff, discrimination, and they'll go along with it, not because they were taught that, but because they feel like they have no choice. Now, I'm going to tell you something. This has been that way for many, many years. This is not something that's new. And it hasn't changed with white feminism. What has grown is the fact that black women have now suddenly fell and bumped their heads and become stupid, which is something that I totally disagree with, who are going and complying with this type of devastating intersectional discrimination against women. You don't have to sit and abide by patriarchy just because you want to be with someone. And you shouldn't do that, especially when you can see that it's hurting women. Don't hide behind religiosity, which also is based in white male patriarchy. Don't hide behind, these are our marriage vows and this my husband, whatever he say, I have to. I've seen actual people do that who are grown, who are adults. I think that we're going back to the 1950s, and it may be worse than that, where women have absolutely no voice. And I mean, about the abortion issue, which is still getting much worse. Hopefully we'll be able to resolve that soon and get it back to normal, but this is pretty bad. This is pretty bad. And I mean, the Violence Against Women Act, it is there, it does work, but not always for women. And I think that's something that we need to come to terms with. We need to start telling ourselves that we need to have more comprehensive legislation. It's not the 1960s. It's 2022, and these men have bigger tricks and, more clown maneuvers that they're out here doing in this circus that they've created, where they put themselves as the ringleader. They live in their own world, and if you give them money, it makes it worse. Now, you can't prevent people who don't deserve money and power from having too much of it. I wish, right? I truly wish. Because they will exploit every bit of it. Pretend like women are their girlfriends. I told you, I already been through that. Pretend like women are their wives. Pretend like every time you pay a bill, you actually paying them like, God forbid you really be paying them like they're your landlord. But, pretend like they're in charge of your body like a slave. But, this loneliness, this insecurity about their manhood, this stupidity, it's not going to get any better until people start talking about it. It's getting much worse. And don't tell me because the majority of people married, because you're lying. Because, over 50% of people have been not married in African-American communities. As a matter of fact, it's approaching 74%. Can you grab this for me just to do it? Hold on, let me stop. Okay. Thank you. And now it's over 50% as far as the divorce rate in white communities. Just move it for me, please. Thank you. So don't tell me that, because you be telling lies and fairy tales. No. The problem is we're not doing anything about this out of control mentality that everything is so frustrating for black men. They're so hurt. It's so hard for them. And then, black women are in every way, well, she pulled up fast behind me. In every way, black women are being demonized, and we're not allowed to say anything. This is just another destructive way that I've seen to try to control black women. And I hate to be that way, but you really need to look out, because in certain areas, these people are not very well educated. So we need legislation. I'll talk to you guys a little bit later. I gotta go. Say bye to the door.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye.